Hunting Fields by Dr. Peter Colla. This is the Hooded Vigilante reading chapter 15, Military K Ultra Proposal. Before I start, I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. If they're watching this in real time, they'll be getting it. It'll be published probably Saturday or Sunday after Thanksgiving. Dr. Peter Colla took an extra day off, and now he's right back at it, and we're publishing the next chapter. If you like this or enjoying this video, you could support Dr. Peter Colla by purchasing his book, but you'd support him more by passing on this information to others, sharing the videos, sharing the content, because that's how the message gets out. Dr. Peter Colla is a self-published medical professional who's tried desperately to put God back into the medical scenario. In that process, he asked God for truths about various things, about diseases, about medicine, and as you start sharing truths and you get truths and you ask God for truths, he gives you these truths and he trusts you with these responsibilities, and you live up to those trusts, and he gives you more. And as you're becoming aware, Dr. Peter Colla asked God about the happenings around the death of his first wife. And God gave him answers in the form of visions, signs, and direct evidence. And you see these in this book. This is a fictional account of people who've had real things happen to them. So, without further ado, bless you on Thanksgiving. Hunting Fields, chapter 15. Military K Ultra Proposal. In the dark arts of the war, the easiest way to create obedient future job-specific slaves, even super soldiers or sex slaves, is to start when they're very young. The earlier the better. Create hidden messages or triggers in the recesses of their mind. Embed in the flashes of audio-visual hyperstimulation as we tell them a vision, stimulated by spellbound clinical and alcohol-accented implementations. Then couple this, add pain or fear to create the necessary compartments in which future tasks will later be assessed. MK Ultra was originally created and called Geistkontrolle in Germany. But since the word Geist is the same word that the Germans use for mind as well as spirit, and while they can manipulate a spirit, they know with absolute certainty it's impossible to control one soul. Okay? So better to limit a person's ability to access the spirit as a way to facilitate control. In the background of the car, Paul and Hilly are driving to the new work Christmas party. While the music is playing, These Boots Are Made for Walking, the song from Nancy Sinatra, seems to be playing in the background. Paul immediately starts to reach to turn off the song, but Hilly stops him. "I like this song," she says, as I leave it to be. She points to her own boots she loves to wear in the fall months of Arizona's heat. I explain as it starts, I never liked that song since I was a child, as I remember hearing it for weeks every day at the same time as my mother watched it repeat on her daily soap opera. They played it like a mantra every day while recreating a murder scene on TV. Flashes in the memory of Paul. The song almost makes him fade into a world of waking daydreaming. You keep a saying, something for me, something, love, confess, is echoed in the words of the song. Images of two boys, brothers, walking to school. They're friendly, best friends, and play together all the time, even when they walk. Was it school or not? A large brick building, and suddenly the older boy, Paul, finds himself alone, waiting outside as the younger boy is ushered in almost against his will and scared. Another flash. The long driveway across the street from the house is long and dark, the same one they lived until Paul was 5. The long, gloomy row of trees and thick, brush-lined driveway had an eerie presence. And while his younger brother needed to go there for babysitting each day, Paul had no memories of ever walking up the driveway of this home. He hears his mother's voice. Your brother has chicken pox, so he needs to stay there by himself. The music is playing. You've a messin' where you shouldn't have been a messin', and someone, all the best. And she makes my brother take a blue pill for his allergies every day. Paul doesn't need them, but for some reason, Anthony does. He's such a happy kid. Why does he cry all the time? And when did he stop talking? He talks to me. The same song is playing over and over in the car speakers as we pull up to the YMCA. The two young boys, now older, Paul, maybe 6 or 7, dropped off in front of the building, standing there as she drives away, flashing lights in the sky. They walk up the stair. The younger, almost his larger younger brother is crying because he doesn't want to go in, but they have to both go in. The young boys think they're going to some Boy Scout meeting. Why did Mom drop us off at the YMCA? Wait, this is a swimming pool at the old mansion. Paul recognizes the large marble pillars of the old brick building. The older brother is frustrated because of these crying spells happen all the time lately. Fine, you stay here, I'm going up. He starts up the stairs, leaving the now scared younger brother Anthony alone below, looking around and feeling even more scared alone. The younger boy quickly runs up the stair and joins his brother as they enter the large, almost temple-like stone building. A man yells at all the children, telling them to hold their heads under the water as long as they can, or are we being held? One of the two brothers, the younger one, is crying. Flashes of lights through the water. Paul can hold his breath underwater longer than any child could with 2 breaths. The instructor takes notes of this and ushers Paul to a separate area of the pool where he does other exercises that the other kids don't get to do. Why does my head hurt? He says to himself as a teacher in a black nun's outfit takes him into the ditto machine room and gives him white pills for his headache. Was this before or after she beats him with a yardstick? But Paul only fakes his crying. He hardly feels it at all. Boots are made for walking, and that's what they'll do. Paul looks up at the speaker above the chalkboard that is suddenly playing that song he kind of likes. When did the teacher decide to put the desk up next to hers? Flashes of light from inside. This seems to be a shower. One moment the lights are on, the next moment they're out. Someone is pushing Paul's face down into the dark shower floor and his mouth is underwater. I need to hold my breath. He just lies still. The strength of the person pushing down is so vast it feels as he's being crushed, yet he can just compress his back and lungs and hold the weight now easily. His brother's voice, he can hear calling his name for help, but he can't move. Is someone lying on top of me, pressing down? I can't move. He lies still, and then the pressure leaves and he is alone. Flashing lights in the dark shower room, or is it a cornfield? He hears his mother yell at him to go down to that Stebbles kid house and get your brother. He never liked going there. It's always so dark in the house. The boy is retarded. looking like a little elf, but Anthony loves playing with him. The kid wanders off like Anthony all the time. Last time they found him in a cornfield way over on the other side of the lake. Flashes of dark, lined light. Two young friends, Paul and Mark, 7 and 8 years old, walking through the dark, empty streets at night, turning into a fog-laden graveyard as they walk among the high gravestones and dark, shadowy crypts. I hear a bell sound in the distance. They snuck out of Mark's bedroom window after his parents went to sleep. Mark's older sister, Samantha, is calling them out into the night. She is barefooted. We are both now too afraid to run, stepping silently past the gravestones as we move towards the center of the cemetery. Mark and Paul follow Mark's sister as she walks through the streets alone. The only thing she's wearing is her white bed shirt. She seems to know where she's going and doesn't mind being barefoot, even though she needs to walk on the gravel pathway. She steps up and is surrounded by women in floating white gowns wearing woven leaf crowns on their head. They lay her on a large stone slab. Her gown is falling off her legs. The boys want to run, afraid they will be seen, but can't. Something's holding them. Paul looks at his arms and legs that are being held by grasses and dead branches of trees. I want to scream, but my mouth is burning from the white pill my mother gave me. It got stuck in my throat. Luckily, I coughed it up and spat it out later. One of these days, the boots are going to walk all over you. There's that song Paul hates playing again in the distance. The lights flicker in the room. Two young men stare at a chessboard between them, both in high school age boys, friends on the opposite side of a board, staring at their own players, all black pawns, while in the middle stands a single white king with a rabbit's face, and a black horned queen wearing black boots stands with two blood red bishops. Both men are too afraid to move a single player, yet both are eagerly waiting for instructions on what to do. Eat the blue pill. Mother said so, Don's voice says to put his mouth, but his mouth didn't move. White rabbits are all watching. Their eyes are sewn open as they shiver in such fright from the inside of the endless rows of cages. They look like they want to die. Paul is angry as he looks at the creatures being treated that way. Rabbits are not created for such things, he says to himself, as his anger for the men that did this builds to rage. Suddenly, John, another boy, is holding a gun. He puts it to his head and click, he pulls the trigger, and the sound is almost as loud as if it had shot. Another flicker of the lights as I watch my friend and I get up and walk away. I'm not playing this game anymore, Paul says, feeling sadness for the friend left behind. You play or you die, Don calls back to him as Paul feels the stare in the back of his neck. Nobody gets out alive. With every step forward, he seems to slide back too, and while Paul starts to run faster and harder than he's ever run before, I can feel the vines tangle around my legs, constricting as I pull my feet out almost as fast as it runs. Suddenly he sees Mark's older sister, now a young woman, naked except she's wearing knee-high black boots, holding his right leg with her arm around it. As he tries to run, she's wrapped herself around even her legs around him, holding him tight. I know if she succeeds, I will certainly fall. She pulls out a long wooden dagger like a witch's wand and stabs him in his knee just as he kicks her off with all of his might. More music. You keep a lying, ought to be truthin'. Why does Samantha keep telling me this to call her Nancy? Paul is an altar boy sitting, waiting with others in the dark hall behind the church as the priests talk to each of them in turn. inside for an interview. How ridiculous it is that they have to put on this altar boy outfit, the large, smelly white shirt that hung down like a dress. And other than the strange symbols and little golden snakes along the fringe, the only visible symbol of the church seems to be the large red cross on the front and back. Outside, he can hear a song playing maybe on someone's car parked outside. He looks back and sees the Boy Scouts shorts. Underneath, he's wearing his badge sash across his altar boy robe. It is filled with badges, and each of them seems to be alive, moving on their own like bugs. He watches as two larger boys are fighting a younger one. They are beating him bloody with sticks and whips, and the smaller one is just lying there screaming in pain as they kick him. Paul wants to get up and help, kill the bigger boys, but he's afraid. A little baby is left in a crib crying when alone in a room, and when the mother and father are told by the doctor to lock it in the room, if it won't stop crying, they do, and the baby suddenly stops. The next day, the baby is gone. It was a baby boy. Paul remembers the shadow stepping out of the closet in the boy's room. You keep a losing, but not bet. The music keeps playing, as if though through the trees on the TV in the other room. Paul can hear the voice of God say to him, do what you want to do. Do what, pause. Paul can hear the voice of God say to him, do you want to go with him where they want, or go where I would have you? The way you know is right. I follow you, God can hear himself say. Get up and leave, God says. The young boy stands up and throws off his oversized white shirt, revealing his naked body underneath except a small pair of underpants, his shoes and socks. He quickly grabs and puts on his pants, shoving his shoes right through without removing them. He tears his knees out of his jeans and doesn't hesitate, then puts on his shirt. He just hears the priest's inner chamber door unlatch and creak open as he passes through the door in the back of the room into the light of the school playground. The large hooded man with black teeth and blacker eyes, foul black smoke coming from the inner door he just exited from as he grabs at Paul, trying to stop the boy. Paul swings his arm back so hard it sends the old man flailing, crashing his blood-red wine bottle face against and into the holy water fountain, turning the water blood as the other children run screaming from the other door of the building. You keep a saying when you should be a changing. Right is right. You ain't right yet. He hears that music playing. My mother hands me a pill. Paul doesn't want it, but she makes him take it. It seems to get stuck trying to go down his throat and burns. Why do I need to take these? And now coughing, the boy says as he chokes. They're for your headaches, the mother says frustratingly as she is putting on her makeup in the morning. My head only hurts when I cough. She hits him in the back of the head and his forehead smacks the counter, splitting it. Paul screams as he sees the blood running down his face from a bleeding gash on his forehead. The doctor says you need to take them. You take them. She's now getting mad as she gets another one out of the bottle. Anthony's watching, starts to laugh from inside the playpen. You getting yours next, she says it as she frustratedly spills the bottle against the table. Damn you kids. Now your brother is crying as his mother turns to slap him. You want something to cry about? She slaps him, now cowering, brother holding his head out to protect his face. These boots are made for walking. The music is playing on the TV mom has on the background. It's always playing every day at the same time, over and over for months. Paul is maybe 4. His brother can barely stand in the playpen in front of the TV. As the dream fades from memory, like a ship over the misty horizon, I suddenly awake with a flash, someone's camera on the other side of the room and realize it is 20 years later as the memory of the dream disappears, yet the song remains. The music is in the background of Heather's home, plays soft enough that it's hard to hear exactly what is playing, but it's loud enough that you can't miss it. I can still hear Heather's voice saying to Sharon in the distance, one of us needs to get him out of the way. He has 7 12s. He joins us or dies. That's what they'll do. Is the music still playing? The flashing lights of the party and perhaps the strong drinks caused me for only a moment to close my eyes and drift off, yet jolt awake and just in time to catch my almost empty drink glass before letting it tumble into the ground. I notice halfway dissolved pill in the bottom of the glass under the ice. I look around and when nobody's looking, I dump the ice and pill onto the fur coat in the shadows next to the chair I'm sitting by. When logic and proportion have fallen sloppily dead, is that the White Rabbit song he can barely hear playing in the background? These drinks are really strong. I think Paul is sitting in a darker corner of the room while Hilly went for a moment to the bathroom. Nobody's looking at me as he nearly dozes off to sleep in the middle of her boss Heather's Christmas party. Most of the people here are her friends and co-workers. They are his as well. From his first job, Paul worked for this company before going out on his own. Pretty much everyone at the party is at least 10 years older than they were. He worked for this company a little while when they first came back from Holland, but really couldn't remember when Hilly started working for them or why or how. I thought it was strange we were having a Christmas party here when it's Halloween had just passed. But Hilly said it's because Heather was going overseas this weekend and was staying out until well after the New Year, so they wanted to have it before she left. At the Vanguard Christmas party at Heather's house, she was his boss. Now she's Hilly's. She's a very charming and attractive older woman. He never really understood exactly what she did or even what she worked and why. Obviously it was a wealthy living in one of the biggest mansions he had ever seen in Phoenix. And she wasn't a care provider, yet being in the medical office, she didn't seem to go to do much office work either, since Hilly and a couple other gals did all of that as well. I guess she's just a partner for her marketing skills. He always liked Heather. It was her that contracted Paul only days after returning from Holland with a great job offer to open a rehabilitation office, Vanguard's new rehab office in Arizona. She was always very interested in both Hilly and him from the moment they met. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you. The song plays in the background. Funny how a person's head can seem to go in and out of your mind when drinking. One moment you're sitting there looking through your eyes, and the next it is as if you're watching yourself from outside. Heather's husband, Damien, also a doctor as well as a full bird colonel in the reserves, steps away from Sharon, the black-haired woman who used to be my boss, and starts to walk over towards me. He happens to run one of the largest research divisions this side of the Mississippi. What he researches wasn't really clear. He continually tried to convince me that being a reserve is a good idea for both of us at this time. He casually walks up to me, sitting in the darker corner of the room. Sharon remains comfortably glancing at the various picture golden circles and awards on the mantle. It never takes his eyes off of Damien or me as he walks up, clearly wanting to talk. He steps up with a smile and sits in the chair next to me, carrying 2 small crystal glasses in his hand. You need another drink? I have some really nice bourbon. We could try a glass over a ball of ice, he says as he hands one of his glasses to me and takes my empty one, setting it on a table next to us. This Blanton's is a special reserve of my family can get. You a bourbon man? I just nod. You a playing where you shouldn't be a playing. The music plays in the background. Damien is pleasant enough, but as Paul speaks to him further, he really doesn't say much that impresses me into believing he is much of a doctor, even though he talks about his extensive experience in pharmaceutical research. I never really drink much whiskey, maybe a little in Europe, but not enough to be any kind of extra. Paul just acts like he takes a small gulp and then keeps his mouth pierced closed, only acting like he's swallowing. This is really smooth, he says. Keep thinking you never get burned. And then there's laughter in the music. Damien smiles with an old, crooked smile, funny little rat face, and pointy nose. The reserves have been really pushy for medical people lately. If you commit to the air reserves, I could promise flight training. Heather tells me you were at one time interested in the academies. He says with another drink himself and an affirming nod. This could allow you to pretty much realize a little bit of those dreams. And at the same time, I could guarantee you'd go immediately in as a captain. That's at least a couple of notches up right now. Sounds good. The only thing is, if we happen to have a major conflict, what are the chances of being called up to active duty? Paul asked, not out of concern, but merely out of curiosity. Not that it would be a problem, but if I had to leave the country, Hilly would be alone here, and I promised that that would never happen. He just smiles and drinking his own glass. I just found a brand new box of matches. Yeah, the music plays in the background. I have to be honest with you, in the case of war, the reserves are called up first, he says with the most reserve affirmation, now glancing back at Sharon, who was just watching the whole conversation from the distance with a smile on her face. The chance of us actually going to war is slim at best, but there's always a chance. That's why you have to do voluntarily join the reserves. He adds with a smile and salute of his own whiskey glass. Plus, we are here. We could always watch her. Paul goes on to tell the colonel about the many times he thought he was going to go into the service via the academies, and the colonel just sat there with a look on his face, as if aware of all these facts, even though it was the first time they two had ever met. What we know, ain't had time to learn. Music plays in the background. What a strange feeling as the room suddenly gets a bit quieter, almost like a cloud goes in front of the sun on a sunny day, except it's nighttime. Paul only acts like he's taken another sip of the whiskey as he just given, waiting for the doctor to turn away as he deposited it again on the other side on the animal's skin resting there on the floor. He glances back at Sharon, who's now standing with Heather and two other women in a heated discussion. Funny, all the women are wearing knee-high black boots. Listening intently to what she is saying, both women keep glancing back over to us as my wife Hilly walks back up to them, and suddenly all turn with smiles back to her. She has a way of bringing smiles to people's faces when she walks in the room. Darkness descends on the room almost on cue as the lights seem to go dim. Paul shakes his head as the fogginess seems to clear and walks over to fill his glass with water. Almost in unspoken order, everyone gathers in a circle around a small, strangely ornate Christmas tree with funny troll-looking wood-carved ornaments in the middle of the room. Everyone started holding hands as Heather led a strange swaying dance with some even stranger music that didn't at all sound like Christmas music, and she read from some old book which she had demonstrated the true nature of Christmas throughout the world, which was what she claimed. It was a poem from an old Celtic verse that words sounded so mumbled, even when Hilly and I looked at to see if we understood it, speaking 6 languages between us. I was surprised as she shook her head slightly. No. The only thing I could seem to make out of the garbled words was that the thoughts that it almost sounded like join us or die. These boots are made for walking. I can hear it in this background again. The words fade from my memory almost as fast as they were speaking. Many of the women closed their eyes and almost seemed to experience an almost sexual pleasure. Only Damien seemed bored, his eyes more interested in watching the women move than concentrating on what was said or a Christmas tree. Heather went on to explain why they decided to celebrate Christmas so early in November. Not to mention Halloween was her favorite holiday, so why not combine them and decorate the tree in a more Celtic fashion? Happen to be both of Damien's and her heritage. And that's just what they'll do. The music continues to play. There may have been other games performed as we stood in the circle, mostly having to do with sexual questions or questions about our first memories of being kissed or running around naked in some dreams or something. Hilly was quickly looked at me from across the room. As I could see her eyes, it was time to go. We were not going to participate in this game, which clearly made Hilly uncomfortable, being so pregnant. Elena and her group and Heather, slightly older women, all seemed to get giggly at the questions. Perhaps it was the alcohol, because of the question of names and the men's parts was asked. It seemed to be an increasing reference to dog names were spoken. Hilly reached for her belly and I took it as a chance. I think we need to go, I said as I stepped up to her and took her hand. We have a long drive and it's an early morning tomorrow. There were a number of disappointing arguments made by others, but they fell on deaf ears as Paul ushered her to get her things and then out the door to a much refreshing and needed clean, cool air. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you. Get ready, boots. Start walking. You can still hear that song playing. Both breathing a sign of relief, I said, I didn't realize how hot it was in there. I don't know about you, Hilly says, but never give up with trying to get you to join the service, do they? I don't know how many times I've had to say no to the military, and now from Elena as well, and her husband and Heather. I say with my head still spinning from the evening. And what about Barb wanting to have that baby with me? You know, has severe arthritis and she's still in her 20s, Hilly explains. The doctor tells her if she doesn't have a child in the next year, she probably never will. She's my colleague, and you see how beautiful she sees how beautiful Nadia is. I can understand that one. So was that what you were talking about with the women about Dr. Damien cornered me? I asked. That, and they were all asking about the scheduled date to choose the cesarean. They all keep talking about the astrological signs point the day earlier, 11 November. She says it with her own chuckle at the absurdity of causing a child's birthday based on astrology. I can't believe that all those science-minded women are so obsessed with that nonsense now, I say, laughing. You were having quite a heated discussion with Sharon, our old boss. I figured she'd be over it by now, when the fact we both quit the same day from her business. That and her company will not be able to support our free office, Hilly said with a disappointed, but not really. They have parented with the insurance company. That's what Heather's going to finalize, and it restricts only participation with other contractees of the same plans. They can have their contract and their secret handshake club. I'm not interested, I said as I looked to my wife, who smiled back at me. They will not control our lives, and I will be damned if I let them tell us when we should have our child. Yeah, that was creepy, Hilly said, almost forgetting about the whole conversation. She offered to take Nadia for a few days when the baby comes. She said with her son is just a few years older and would love to have a sister for a while. I hope you said no, I threw out, not feeling like the frustration and anger doing more for clearing my head than even the water. I can't stand that bitch. And when did she ever give a rat's ass even about her kid? He grabbed her jacket and started heading for the car, opened the front door for his 9-month-old pregnant wife without even waiting for anyone to walk them out. I know, Hilly said, excited to leave the house with a sigh. But she sure got mad when I wouldn't agree. I thought she was going to take a swing at me. Even pregnant, you could kick her ass, I said with a laugh. But inside, I was fuming. She's a witch, I said as we walked out. Yeah, I'm so glad you saw. I wanted to leave. For a minute, I thought I was going to faint. The last thing I wanted to do was throw up all over Heather's expensive Persian carpet. She said with a laugh, even though it spoke truth. Hilly hated to throw up. So if she threw up anywhere, it probably closer than he realized. You looked like you were sleeping for a bit there. Yeah, I had a headache earlier, so I must have taken one of my headache pills, but didn't swallow it. I said as I told her about the drink and poured them on the coat next to the car, but next to the chair by mistake. I turned out to be Sharon's, which made me laugh and made Hilly laugh even more. What was that so-called lamb dinner they served? I never saw a sheep with that big of horns. I think they sold her a goat instead. I couldn't get it over that smell. It must have been rotten. Yeah, I told Heather I was sorry, but because of my pregnancy, I didn't even think it was even wise to even try it. She said with a smile, figuring it was one positive thing out of her physical burden, the already nearly busting stomach on her small frame. I didn't think anyone saw, but I wrapped my entire greasy portion in my napkin and dropped it on the ground under the table, I said with a laugh, as I opened the car door for his wife and then climbed in behind the wheel, buckled Hilly's seatbelt for her and started the car. Heather's going to be pissed when she sees that large grease spot under the table in the morning, right in the middle of her Persian rug. She has there. They both laughed as they started the car. Okay, are you okay to drive? You had a drink back there, Hilly asked. I dumped it, and I feel great, I said with my usual smile. But you know that stuff never really touches me, only the opposite. But yes, I'm perfect, like you. As I backed out of the crowded parking area and drove down the long driveway, finally turning from the dark driveway, he caught a glimpse back at the old house in the rearview mirror. For just a moment, I thought I could have sworn I saw all the women staring at us out various windows of the small mansion. All of them had dark black eyes, just staring with blank looks on their faces. I've seen that look before. Hilly turns on the radio, and the same Nancy Sinatra song starts ending. These boots are made for walking, and that's just what they'll do. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you. Are you ready, Boots? Start walking. You're right. I don't like that song either, Hilly says as she reaches over and turns off the radio. After a death or a near-death experience, memories of the past fall randomly in one's mind, like an old dried winter leaves of a last summer's bloom. There are more deaths due to over-the-counter medication usage than any other cause today. And when combined with alcohol, it becomes a Russian roulette game we play with our own lives. That was chapter 15. Hunting Fields. Military K Ultra Proposal. This is the Hooded Vigilante. Until tomorrow. Bless you.